If you want to know the rest of my views about God and that kind of thing in religion, then you can look at the other playlist, the other videos on this playlist. Suffice it to say that if you consider the existence of God to be a hypothesis which is able to explain the intricacy and the apparent intelligent design of the universe and a finely tuned universe, that claim is firmly refuted by the theory of evolution and the anthropic principle. However, some atheists go further and claim that Jesus never existed either. So let's look at that. Well, the often quoted Josephus and Talmud claims that Jesus did exist. For example, Josephus mentions Jesus. That claim does not appear in the quotes from that work, and also it's out of place in the passage. It's in a different style, and it seems to be a forgery. It seems to be inserted, so I don't think that's a good way of doing it. The other thing is the criterion of embarrassment, which is used to claim that the Talmud is not going to say Jesus existed because it's in their interest to say he didn't, yet it does. However, if you look at the quotes that appear to mention, I think it's Yeshua in the Talmud, those are not actually very good because they don't actually enable one to identify the person mentioned with this person in Palestine that Christians believe in. So neither of those really work. I think the Gospels are useful as a source, but I want to talk about that a bit later. Ancient history type evidence is different from the kind of evidence that is seen today in modern history because not many people were literate, and the kind of people who were literate were scribes, people writing for kings, and they obviously were biased. Of course, history is always biased, but I think it's particularly biased there. So I think that we have to look at circumstantial evidence for the existence of Jesus. At times of crisis, spiritual crisis or national crisis, people do appear who are charismatic leaders or charismatic figures in one way or another. An example of that will be Haile Selassie. Another one is Martin Luther King, and of course Martin Luther himself, Mahatma Gandhi, and in particular Thich Quang Duc. Thich Quang Duc is particularly interesting here because of his self-sacrifice. But I'm not going to talk about him here. If you look at Jewish history, there have been many claimants to the office of Messiah throughout their history, from the time when the idea of the Messiah came up until the present day. It would be a little bit surprising in a way if there wasn't a claimant to the Messiah at that time, and there was about 200 years before and a few hundred years later. So why would there not be? Because it's a career opening for a nice Jewish boy, born in the right circumstances, to claim to be the Messiah. So that's not really a problem. So I think it would be a bit strange if there wasn't somebody claiming to be Jesus at that point, that this Jesus person was not the Messiah, or was not the Messiah, but was not a claimant to be the Messiah. That's entirely plausible and consistent with Jewish history. Another thing is the nature of the Q document, sayings of this Jesus person. Somebody came up with that stuff, and it may not be particularly original. It could have been the Essenes, or it could have been a group of people of another kind, and some in fact claim that it's not particularly original and it's been said in a lot of other places in similar ways. But I don't think it's a very audacious claim to say that there was some prophet who existed at that time who said those things. And it seems also quite plausible that these two people were the same person, the Messiah claimant and the person who made those claims, or made the Sermon on the Mount and so forth, are in fact the same person. Now, I'm not making a claim here that the individual concerned was responsible for the miracles, rose from the dead, was born of a virgin, or anything like that. But I am claiming that to claim that he didn't exist is going too far. It's a bit like claiming that Socrates and Diogenes didn't exist, which, again, those things are entirely plausible. Socrates and Diogenes maybe didn't exist. But it seems like there's a sort of special pleading situation here, where people are actually not really being skeptical, refraining from making a claim, in the absence of evidence. They are in fact making a specific claim which is more about wanting to be even more atheist than somebody else is, or to take up a strong and extreme position rather than actually based on rationality. And I think that's quite embarrassing, because the true nature of skepticism is to refuse to make that kind of claim, or always to say, well, this is conjecture. That doesn't happen here. When people claim that Jesus doesn't exist, it's actually going too far. Now, if you like this video, please rate, comment and subscribe. If you dislike it, please tell me why so I can improve, and I'll see you tomorrow.